All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see some faces on the screen and to have this opportunity to talk with you a little bit about supervisor considerations. As mentioned, I'm the chief of the district ops section for the division. And so I supervise the regional coordinators across the state. So every district has a regional coordinator assigned to you. These folks will be coming to your board meetings and are just a great resource for you on so many things. I've filled that role in the southeastern part of the state prior to coming to this position, so have a lot of experience working with local districts, but always learn more things the more counties I work with, because every district is unique in what they do and how they do it. So, but this morning we're going to talk a little bit about supervisor considerations. We're going to talk about appointment processes, training requirements, and attendance requirements by rule. And so just very basic. I know some of you are newer than others, but very basic, board makeup. Most boards have 5 supervisor members. 3 of those folks are elected and 2 are appointed. They serve 4-year terms, and the terms are staggered, so they aren't, having a full board turnover in any given year. And then midterm appointments can happen. So if you have a supervisor resign or move out of the district in the middle of their term, the board makes local recommendations to our state commission, and that person would fill the remainder of the term for the individual that they're replacing. Steve, I see you on the line this morning. The Albemarle district is the exception to this. They do have a 17-member board, 3 elected per county, and then 2 at-large seats. So very basic district board makeup. And then I did send a message to the listserv probably about 2 weeks ago about the terms that will be ending this year. So the 2022 to 2026 terms will end on that first Monday in December. You can find your current board members' terms in our district directory that's posted on the website. So if you have any question about whose seat is coming up for either election or appointment, you can find that information there. Everybody should have 2 seats up for election and 1 up for appointment or reappointment. By statute, the elected folks file with the local Board of Elections office. That filing period runs from noon on the 2nd Monday in June through noon on the 1st Friday in July. I would encourage you, if you've got, well, all of you will have 2 that are filing for election. Check with your Board of Elections office on that end date, because sometimes holidays do sort of shift things around. So, you don't want someone waiting till the very last minute and then find out that there's no longer the opportunity to file. And then appointments and reappointments are done through FormSite, and there's a link on our website to that page. This year, since the commission will act on all the appointed seats at their November meeting, we are requesting districts turn in those forms by October 30th. There is the need for the board to vote on those appointed seats, so that's something you want to do before your October board meeting. So board vacancies, we can think of these as both challenges and opportunities, right? I know for some districts it can be difficult to find good board members. So how do we recruit new supervisors that make excellent leaders, and what are the sorts of things we should be considering as we make recommendations for these appointed seats? The commission does have some guiding principles related to supervisor appointment. And these are things they've put together to sort of help you think through the process of the leaders that you're recommending for your district. So you can see some of the factors they encourage. They do encourage 2 or more members representing agriculture on the local boards. They also encourage you to think about new leadership skills that they could bring. Then political connections. There is important, local and state and relationships beyond that. What sort of influence can they have on those relationships? Then thinking about geographic diversity, you might want to consider making sure all areas of the county are represented, and then diversity in agriculture. Different types of operations that folks may be involved in are good things to consider. Also, they encourage districts to think about engaging non-traditional partners in the boards. So maybe a nonprofit group or someone associated with the university. And then looking at the ag, non-ag perspective, racial, ethnic, and gender diversity, and then any involvement someone's shown beyond the local level. So I often have districts say, you know, we're really having a hard time finding a new board member. What can we do? So looking to folks that are involved in other organizations at the local level is a good place to start. Then also thinking about fundraising, education, marketing, outreach. You can see that this list is long and there's lots of things to consider. And the more diversity you have on the board, the better they're going to represent your district. So that has to do with the appointment process. Does anybody have any questions related to that, or ideas or suggestions? Anything you want to chime in on related to the board composition itself? All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about supervisor training requirements. So these are the requirements of the folks that serve on your district boards. Training and participation enhances leadership skills. So the more folks get involved, the more they have the opportunity to learn from other districts, things that are going on, you know, considerations to be had at board meetings, and expanding that knowledge base really helps folks become better leaders. Also, engagement in the board meetings is important. You know, you have to be there to be a good leader. You have to participate. So the rules and statutes that we have do require both training and participation. And the commission has removed supervisors from office for non-compliance. So it's not something that we like to do, but it's something that our commission has the authority to do. So we'll talk a little bit about General Statute 139-7.2. This speaks to the training of district supervisors. And the statute reads, all district supervisors, whether elected or appointed, shall complete a minimum of 6 clock hours of training per term of service. So basically in 4 years, they need to get those 6 hours of training in. The training topics are listed in the statute as well. So the training shall include soil, water, and natural resources conservation, and the duties and responsibilities of district supervisors. So that's relatively broad topics. I would say, you know, there are plenty of opportunities for us to engage district supervisors in training, and we're going to talk a little bit about those as we go along. The statute does say the training may be provided by the School of Government at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill or other qualified sources as approved by the Soil and Water Conservation Commission. So we've got the statute that sort of lays out the requirement for training. Then we have the rules that sort of dig in on the details on how we do this and what we do and what counts for training activities and how do we keep track of these. So again, all supervisors are required to obtain those 6 hours of training credits per term. The rules include both a mandatory training requirement and then the term training requirements. So there's sort of two pieces to it. And then credit is assigned with 1 supervisor training credit being equal to 1 hour of instruction. So the delivery methods for supervisor training are spelled out in the rule. These are some of the options that we've got. So we've got that basic training course. It was offered alongside the annual meeting this year in January. We've also got the regional sessions coming up in February, and fingers crossed weather will cooperate so that we can do those in the way that Brian has them planned out at this point. But there are other training activities that are available as well. So we've got other association-sponsored activities, including that annual meeting that just happened in January. Also, the area spring and fall meetings are a great time for training for supervisors. And the training credits that are awarded for those activities sort of vary based on the agenda that is put together by that host district and area chair. We can also provide credit for board meeting approved topics. So if you have a speaker come into the board meeting and speak to either natural resources conservation topics or duties and responsibilities of supervisors, we can award credits for those. Your regional coordinator can help you submit requests to get those approved. And then if you have district sponsored activities go on, classroom training, field days, in those cases we can award credit for those activities as well if supervisors are participating. The commission also often does field tours along with the commission meetings that go on 6 times a year. So if the commission is hosting a field tour, we can give supervisor training credit for that. And then other activities, if the credit is given for NRCS, for CCP status, or other different activities that go on can also be counted for training credits. So like I mentioned, we do have both the mandatory component and then that continuing component. So the mandatory training is that basic training. That is the course that's coming up over the next couple weeks in February. And it's required for newly appointed and newly elected supervisors. They are supposed to attend at the next offering. So within the first year of appointment, they're supposed to attend. We do honor previous attendance at the course. But we also encourage folks to come back and revisit the course. Participation is encouraged once every 2 terms. The content does change a little bit. And there's also some really great group activities that go on during that training. And so it's always a little bit different. I've been to basic training a lot of times in the last 20 years, but I learn something every time because you get a different perspective from the different folks that are participating. So hopefully that's something that you all will have a chance to participate in sooner than later. So some of the responsibilities for your supervisors, this is to attend that mandatory training and also those term training requirements. They are also required to verify the training credits that are awarded for their training activities. These are posted on our website. The page has 2 different spreadsheets depending on which term they're in, and it'll show how many clock hours they have for that given term. Supervisors are also required to report to the division when partial credit should be awarded. So say they participated in the annual meeting, but they have to leave a day early. They should be letting us know that so that we don't give them the credit for the full activity, even if they've only participated in part of it. And then if they fail to complete training requirements, they are required to provide a written explanation to the commission related to that. The commission does take hardship into consideration. They understand, if people have illness or other things of that nature, that's something that can definitely be considered in looking at any type of where anybody lacks the training that's required. All right, so that's training piece. Does anybody have questions related to the training aspect for supervisors? And I would encourage you to go ahead to the webpage and look at the credit hours that your folks have, particularly the ones with terms that end in December, because we've got, spring meetings coming up, that basic training. We've also got an advanced training course for supervisors that will be hosted in the mountain region this year. Gail, you've got your hand raised.
I didn't want to interrupt you. I just want to encourage staff that it's okay to remind supervisors. As a soil and water supervisor now, it's okay for you to remind supervisors of how many credits they do or don't have. Because even though Christina sends this out on listserv, supervisors may or may not look at it. So, maybe that's something that at a board meeting that you say, have y'all looked at your credit hours? And one of the things that the position as president of the association, I'm also on that state commission. And the last thing that we enjoy doing is seeing the names of supervisors that have to be discussed on whether or not we ask them to be removed and again, there's many reasons why supervisors cannot attend, but do remind them, do bring that up. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. And I think it's a good point, and sooner is better, right? Because the training opportunities are coming up. And so if we find out, 8 months ahead of schedule is way better than trying to scramble and get 6 hours in, 1 or 2 months right before their terms end in December. So Absolutely. Earlier is better, and we've got plenty of opportunities over the next few months. Mandy, did you have a question? Oh, you've got your hand raised?
I think it might have been from when I asked if they were
Gotcha.
there. It's just kind of hanging out. She's saying hello.
Okay, not a problem. Well, if you do, just chime in. So we're gonna sort of switch gears a little bit and talk about supervisor participation as well. This is also required by the rules that we have in place. So 02 NCAC, that's North Carolina Administrative Code 59A, is the rules that relate to supervisor training and attendance. And we have this 0301C. And so in that rule, each district board shall notify the commission in writing of any member that has failed to attend 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings, except when prevented by illness of the supervisor. Notification from that district shall include an explanation for non-attendance and the actions that the district board has taken to address the supervisor's attendance. So we actually, of course, have an online form to make this reporting hopefully simple for you guys and streamlined, but that is something that's required. Attendance is important. Like we said, you can only serve the district if you're there, right? So by rule, there is a requirement for districts to submit an annual attendance report from all members. Again, that's something I've put on the listserv a couple times over the last month or so, but these are due by January 31st. So at the March commission meeting, I'll be making a report to the commission just to let them know sort of what's going on across the state in terms of number of board meetings, percentage of attendance, and we even break it down by area. You know, what does that look like? How many board meetings are being held in the western part versus, you know, central or eastern part of the state. So the supervisors that have missed 3 in a row have been removed for non-compliance. We did that fairly recently. I want to say maybe November we had a hearing, and we've got another one coming up, unfortunately, in March. But you know, if someone is not active on the board, we do have recourse to remove them. The commission does look to the local districts to have conversation locally prior to, you know, elevating it to that point. But just keep in mind that these are reporting requirements for the districts. And so that's all I had in terms of, you know, prepared comments to share with you guys, but I'd love to hear any questions you have, or just how we can support you in best supporting your board.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Christina. That is phenomenal. So, I know that there's a lot that goes into those supervisor trainings, and it's nice to have those like refreshers. And so it's nice to be able to go through it with the new employees specifically. So, feel free to put your questions in the chat. You can raise your hand, you can come off mute, but this is a great chance to ask questions, or even like run through an idea or curiosity, even if you're not exactly sure how to ask the question. Normally we can figure out what you mean, because it can get complicated, so we totally understand. Gail, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just adding on to what Christina said, I can give an example. We had a supervisor that had missed 3 consecutive meetings, and his was related to a family. His mother was very sick, and he was the primary care, you know, had to check on her daily, being an only child. And but we're having our meetings in the morning, in the daytime. And so our board chose to move our meeting time to an evening time so that he could make the meeting. So again, and every board's different, I realize, but that was something, you know, when we talked to him, he said, I can't make a daytime meeting because I'm taking care of my mother. And so we moved our meeting time so that he could make a nighttime meeting. So, you know, you can change those meeting dates, which you just have to give your public open meeting folks the proper time to adjust and make sure they make the announcement early enough. So don't feel like you can't change your meeting time.
Yep. That's a good point, Gail. I mean, the meetings need to be convenient for the board members, and we need to make it, you know, every opportunity for them to participate. So that's a very good point. One thing I wanted to mention during the slides, and I sort of ran past it, thinking about board transition. You know, we talked about making recommendations for the appointed seats, and the districts have control over those recommendations. But, when time comes for board transition, you want to be thinking about this earlier in the process. So that is why the message was sent to the listserv in January related to the terms that are ending in December. You don't want to put somebody on the spot in the summer and say, are you filing for reelection? And you want to give folks time to sort of think about if they want to continue to serve. So I know as a regional coordinator, I sat in on some meetings, and, it would come up time for election, and, folks wouldn't have a lot of notice and would end up filing, even though, they had other responsibilities and commitments and didn't feel like they could fully commit to the district board any longer, but were sort of, in a tough spot because they didn't want to leave the board hanging either. So it probably would be a good idea just to make folks aware, like, hey, your term does end in December. Do you plan to continue? And if not, that gives the district plenty of time to try to seek a new individual that would be a good leader for the group. So I just wanted to mention that as well. It was something I intended to cover when I ran through that slide, but missed it because I didn't have any notes related to it. So Brian, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to mention too, as in the district office, regardless of, what your position is, it's not uncommon to get a phone call, people wanting you to tell them who to vote for Soil and Water District Board member. And that's a bad situation to be, well, not a situation where, you in your public capacity want to be, picking a candidate kind of thing. But too, we have run into some issues even with certain local election boards who didn't quite understand how the election process worked, especially if there was an appointment midterm kind of thing. So our association, we do have a little folded pamphlet that kind of gives some background. If you have someone that's interested in being a soil and water supervisor and they just want to know, what the background is, what's required of them, we put that information in there. We've had some supervisors win the office and think they had a full-time job with a car in the office. That's not the case. So it kind of gives some of that information as well. And it's accessible. I think we do need to update the per diem rates in the current one we have. But that's available too for you. So.
Excellent. I love that. Thank you. Okay, guys, do you have any questions that you're burning to ask? And Gail and David and Brian have graciously agreed to stay on to kind of help field some of these questions as well. So Gail is a supervisor. David has worked on a lot of these roles and helped support the supervisors. And of course, Brian represents the organization that represents those supervisors and lobbies on our Soil and Water District's behalf. So any questions that you can think of for them or Christina?
I would just ask that Brian post that brochure he was just describing in the chat. That would be a good thing to do.
Okay. It may be better if we send it out because, like I said, I think we do need to update the per diem rates because I think there were 23, 24 rates in there. So I'll get it to Brandy and she'll share it with y'all. If that's okay.
I can do that.
And
Awesome.
Christina, I'll ask you to help me with that.
Yeah,
because I know you know the per diem
course.
off the top of your head. So.
Yeah.
It's always a group effort, but friends, this is always how it goes. It's like send it to a couple different people we have to work together. You know what I mean? So while you guys are thinking of questions, just for the new employees, I know that like each of the soil and water districts operate a bit differently, but like what are the responsibilities of a supervisor? Like, tell me more about what they can sort of come to expect or maybe even encourage based on those responsibilities. I don't know if Christina, if you want to take this one, or you're welcome to say what you want and then hand it off. So
Sure. I mean, I'll kick it off, and I'm sure the others have definitely got some experience and expertise to lend to that. But at the core, they're responsible for guiding natural resources programs in the district, right? So guiding that conservation effort. But that is done in different ways in different places. So, it might be influencing the state and federal cost share programs. Of course, with our state cost share programs, it comes to decision making about projects that get funded. But it also might have to do with environmental education activities that are done in the district. then there's other aspects in dealing with staff, staff development, staff training. There's building relationships with the county officials. Those are so important. Most of your funding comes from those county coffers. And so keeping those relationships active and engaged is very important. So it's a very big role, lots of hats to wear, like Gail does. And so that's just sort of at the very base level what I'll lend to that question. I'm sure others have other things to add.
Gail?
I would like to encourage, I mean, it doesn't matter what position you have in the district office, and I'm coming from this as a former employee. To me, it doesn't matter if you're administrative, if you're education, if you're technical focus. Everybody in the office, staff-wise, should know what those roles of the supervisors are. You should know and understand what open meeting rules are. And, every board runs their meetings differently. But in our district, when I was staff, my soil and water board expected every one of us to give them a report of what we'd done, and projects that we were working on. And, especially if there was some projects we were having concerns with, making them aware of that. And so if that's not something you currently do, I would encourage you to ask your chairman, ask your board if you could give a report, because that's how they stay engaged. If they don't need to find out about a problem that has popped up, months after it's been ongoing. They need to understand, some of the struggles maybe you're having with a landowner, or, some cost share funding, or whatever it is. It may be concerns you have with even getting into some of the school systems to do educational programming. And so, I do encourage you to share that with the board members, because that's, from where I come from, that's what we've always done, and that's what the board is supposed to also hear during those reports.
I also just want to add to that I was unaware of this, but I've recently heard that district staff are now preparing reports that are very visual, actually, with pictures that are showing progress of how things are coming and things like that. And I think that those resources of the time that it takes to make sure that you prepare in advance of those board meetings, give those visual aids to help support. It's just going to make their decisions and the conversation more successful and productive. So I just thought that was a nice thing I had recently learned that I've been trying to encourage technical or non-technical staff in their reporting for those board meetings. So I thought it was fascinating.
Our staff, when they update us on STRAP, they have a couple of slides and map locations and slides of the blockages in the streams and why it qualified for STRAP and that type of thing. So our staff does that type of thing also, which is really helpful as a board member.
Yeah, for sure. David or Brian, did you have anything that you wanted to add regarding supervisor responsibilities in the districts?
Well, one thing that I often like to remind people of is that districts are to be the lead entity for the local working group that is required by USDA that it be done. The expectation is that it will be led by the districts. Although that isn't, if the district doesn't do it, it doesn't mean it doesn't get done. That means NRCS has to pick up the mantle. But that is not the expectation. We want the districts to be in the lead for those things and to be the one. This is the opportunity for the district to tell NRCS what it wants the priorities to be for NRCS programs and activities. So it's a very important thing that often goes overlooked, I guess I should say. And but it's a very important duty and opportunity to influence a lot more money than we have available to work with through state programs. They have NRCS invests 10 times the amount of money that the state does right now for at least for cost share, that is ag cost share type stuff. STRAP is a different example, a different beast, but so I encourage you to take that very seriously. The time for that, for those work groups to meet, is generally going to be in the spring, and your coordinators, area coordinators, are available to help with getting those meetings organized. A lot of districts do that because NRCS is organized into teams. A lot of districts will do it on the team level. So all of the districts in your team will come together to have a single local working group meetings. Although I would very much encourage each district to have its own local work group meeting and then bring those recommendations together to discuss at the team level. I think that's a more effective way for the districts to be in a stronger leadership role for those things.
Excellent.
But all that is, but the district and the district supervisor should be taking ownership of that meeting and making it happen.
It's pretty timely that you mentioned the local work groups, because we're like in planning season of getting these started in the late spring type typical time frame-ish. So you might be seeing some information. If you don't know about your local work group, talk with your coordinator. Feel free to reach out to me, whatever, but we will make sure you get up to speed if you have any questions. Brian, did you want to add anything about supervisor responsibilities?
I think everybody covered a lot. The only thing I will say is it is important for supervisors, and we encourage them to know who their local leaders are, their state leaders, their federal leaders, meaning those in Congress and North Carolina House and local government kind of thing, to know who they are and build a relationship with them.
Absolutely.
Very important, and very important to know. It don't matter what you know. It don't matter who you know. It's all about who knows you. And so them having those types of relationships can be beneficial for the partnership across the board, but especially to the individual districts. So
awesome. I love that. That's very helpful. I do have a question for Christina. So can you explain to the group, how do supervisor contracts work? Obviously, a lot of them, board members, they have their own operations. They might be interested in putting conservation practices, seeking cost share funds. So what does that even look like? Can they do that? What's the process?
They can. They have opportunity to take advantage of the conservation programs that we implement as well, just like any other producer in the district. But there are additional steps and things for them to consider in the process. So first, they need to abstain from voting on anything where they have a financial interest, and make sure that's reflected in the meeting minutes. Then there are also additional forms that get filled out for cost share. I think it's the 1B form. I can walk you to it on the website. So there's an additional form to fill out. There's an additional form site form to fill out that collects some background information for the division staff to have details to share with the commission, because those supervisor contracts actually get approved by the commission as well. So if you've got a supervisor that wants to participate, that's wonderful, but just make sure you know there are some additional steps that we need to take in order to fund those projects. Would it be helpful to sort of point you on the website where those forms are, or?
Why don't you take a second to do that? And I want, while you do that, Gail and David and Brian to think about a question. We'll only have about a minute probably for each of you, because I do want to let them go at noon. But what's one piece of advice you would give a new employee for building a productive relationship with their board supervisors? So think that one over. Christina's going to show us this, and I'm going to put you on the spot for a little piece of advice.
All right. So the supervisor contracts, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the division's webpage. So you'll go under programs and initiatives, and then under any of these cost share programs, I believe it's under resources. And then we've got general program forms. And if you look here, you'll see both the supervisor contract addendum, which is the 1B form, and then the supervisor and commission member contracts online form. So you'd actually fill out both of those pieces. Your cost share specialist, you want to give them a heads up that this is something that needs to be presented to the commission at an upcoming meeting, and make sure you get all the details they need in order to present those contracts. And of course, your regional coordinator can help sort of walk you to some of the requirements as well. But definitely be good to be communicating with your cost share specialist related to those, just to make sure everything is in order.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Christina. Oh, go ahead, David.
I would add, I'm trying to look to see if any of you fall into this category right now, but if your supervisor happens to be one of the Soil and Water Convention members, it's a slightly different process because that has to be approved by the commissioner. So it goes on a 1A form instead of a 1B, but I'm not sure if that applies to anybody here, this group at this time.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Christina. You did a fabulous job. I love this topic, so you did phenomenal. So I want to close us out with Gail and David and Brian. So just one brief piece of advice on what you would advise on sort of productive working relationship between a new employee and their district board. So whoever.
Communication.
Oh, yeah, I was going to agree. I agree with you.
Same message.
Yeah.
That's good.
I would say just make sure that they don't get caught by surprise.
Right.
That if there is something going on in your district that they may get approached by, make sure they know what's going on in the district and have the opportunity to ask questions about it. And so that includes the education programs, that includes the technical and the cost share and even the NRCS things. They're going to run into farmers at the church or at the store or wherever, and they're going to assume that they know what's going on. And if they don't, let's just say this: if I were a supervisor and I got something was going on and somebody asked me about it and I didn't know about it, I would not be happy. So.
Ditto.
Yeah. Okay.
Because again, coming at it from employee side and now a supervisor side, communication, more communication. I'll give just a brief. I got an email this week from a citizen that I guess they saw soil and water supervisor, and it was a concern that a landowner was crossing a creek and dumping dirt, and what were they doing? And they wanted me to confirm that I had gone to the site. So of course, the first thing I did was communicated with all of my supervisors to see if they had gotten that email. But then I, included all the staff and said, can y'all look into this, and let me know what's going on. And of course, it was new to them. It was a surprise to them also. But communicate. So.
Thank you, Gail. Brian, did you want to add anything?
I think they covered it well enough.
Excellent. And I know sometimes it can be really nervous, like, they're board supervisors, they are doing great work for the community, and it can be really it can be nerve-wracking, I think, for a new employee to have those conversations. But the more that you do it, the more of a practice you make it, I promise you it will get easier. So maybe even just pick up the call and check in on them every now and then over something not so serious. That way, if there was ever an issue or you needed advice, then, it makes that just a little bit less scary. If for some reason that it makes you nervous. So I want to thank Gail and David and Brian and Christina again. You guys are phenomenal to work with. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the panel and to teach us about the supervisor requirements. I really love these topics. So I hope that our new employees got some great things out of today. I hope you made some connections. And I hope that when you see these 4 individuals and Amanda out at conferences or trainings or meetings, that you go and say hi. You know what I mean? Like, you want to keep it going. You want to keep the relationships building. These matter. And, if you need something, you call them. They are very welcoming individuals. They give their emails and cell phone numbers out, like, everywhere I go. So, like, if you need them, call them. Gail.
I just want to also encourage, if there's a commission meeting in your area, in your particular area, I encourage you to attend or at least listen in on the business session, or the business session is more the meat of everything. You get the full session, because that will also help you learn more about what's going on, as far as the whole body of the group and the agencies and the partnership. So
yes, it's a great opportunity to learn and get more information. All right, you guys, I feel very, I like to try to end when I say I'm going to end something. So thank you guys for joining. I hope I get to see you for our training segments in February. If you have any ideas for training segments, let me know. Thank you for joining, and I will talk to you soon. So have a great rest of your day, great weekend, great Friday, all the things. And if you're at Russell too tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow.